Yo, what's the story? In today's video, cinematic gimbal moves that anyone can master, even with a budget gimbal. I'm going to be using the new Zhiyun CinePeer Weebil 3E, which is less than 250 bucks right now. I've left a link in the description and a discount code. But let's dive into these gimbal moves that's really going to make your footage cinematic. And I promise, they're really easy to do. First up is a reveal shot. So we want to kind of reveal our scene, maybe our character. And the way I think about this compositionally, it's always good that you have something kind of in the foreground that's kind of close to the viewer that you can view. So I've got the back of the bench here, and literally I'm holding the gimbal and I'm walking right back close to my son Cameron's subject, and we're going kind of by his head. That's giving a sense of motion and depth. And then the back of this bench goes by and you have got your first really simple scene. If we want to make this just a little bit more interesting, if you're up for a bit of a challenge, and that's get our subject to do something. In this case, I'm getting him to sit onto the seat, walk on, sit his butt down as I'm pulling back at the same time. Now, here's the thing with this. You're going to have to do this a few times. I guarantee you, this is one of the problems with gimbals that I'm going to get into in a minute. But if you put in the time here, this took a couple of takes just to get him sitting right. And that's what you have to do. So rehearse with your talent. There's an even cleverer way to do a reveal shot now. For this, you're going to have to start somewhere that doesn't show the face. So in this case, and in a lot of cases, you start at the bottom, which is the subject's feet. Now, I've got the camera pointed at Cameron's feet as I'm walking backwards. Now, you're going to have to practice the pacing here back and forth because it's hard to get them at the right distance and to keep that pace going. But start walking backwards, and then eventually you start panning the camera up and lifting it right up, and then you reveal and focus on the face, and you just keep walking backwards. It's a nice way of adding a little bit of tension. When I mention pacing, it's probably never more so important than in this shot. This is a tracking shot. It's a side profile shot, and I'm walking along here with the subject just off to the side, and I've got the kind of composition the way I want. Now, as opposed to getting Cameron try and match my speed, I'm going to match his speed. But keep in mind, when you start walking with somebody, you're going to be all over the place. So what I do is I get him to start walking, and I'm going to kind of stagger my start time. So I'm actually behind him. And then by the time I catch up to him in just a couple of steps, it means that I'm actually going to match his speed a lot quicker, a lot easier, and the whole scene is a lot more fluid. The next gimbal move is a classic gimbal move. This is kind of what I'd call the classic orbit shot. Now, for beginners starting out, this is easy to do if you do it at least 10 times. To be honest, keep whatever you have, you're orbiting or you're rotating around, keep that in frame. Keep it in the center of the frame as best you can, and just walk around your actual subject, and that's it. Simple, okay? But you got to keep doing it because you're going to drift here, you're going to drift there. Something like pan and follow mode in most gimbals is ideal for this scenario, so the camera is going to turn, but the settings are really important, but I'm not going to dive into those here. It's an amazing looking shot regardless of the lens that you have on. And if it's a close-up shot like I have, great. If it's a wider shot, then you get more of the actual area. Real kind of Michael Bay cinema stuff going on, except nothing's exploding. Not yet anyway. One of the biggest cinematic shots that most folks will be very familiar with is a jib shot or a crane shot. So essentially in Hollywood, they put an expensive camera onto a really big crane. We're putting a less expensive camera onto our gimbal, the Cinepeer Weebil 3E, and we're also putting the gimbal onto a tripod. So this is what's going to help us do this. So essentially what we do, we got our gimbal on, and you can, in its simplest form, do an up to down shot, okay? So up high, so it looks like we're up high, and then we're just kind of panning down. If you put a little bit of motion into it, slightly moving forward, that's good as well. That gives extra sense of depth. But as we can see, we're going slowly down, and there's our subject. Now, again, practice, okay? So what I would suggest here with this is start where you want to end, okay? So frame up the shot. So I'm kind of using the rule of thirds composition here. Composition. And essentially we get the shot so we know what we want to do. And if you don't hit it the first time, do it again. If If you miss it, do it again and again and again. So that's one kind of shot that you can do when you've got the actual tripod screwed on to a gimbal. It's really, really cool. There's a problem with all of this though. Some of you might be up for it. Some of you will absolutely keel over and die. But before you get to that, you can also do this shot, which is faking a drone shot. So essentially what we're doing is we're holding the gimbal straight up and then we're just walking forward and we're bringing it down in behind our subject. Now there's lots of different ways that you can do this, but this is one that's very cinematic looking. It's very cool. Folks think it's a drone shot and then it could be a drone shot, but it's not, because you're doing it with the gimbal and you're bringing it down. And again, this looks really, really cool. This is where things get really kind of amazing looking, and this kind of stuff is what makes your footage stand out if you're going to be using a gimbal. It's how you think about it. So while we have the gimbal on a tripod, then shove it through for something like a pull through. So shove it through a car, 2 windows down, obviously, and you can just pull through. This could be a window, it could be a door, it could be whatever, okay? And again, you're going to have to rehearse this. This is one of the downsides with gimbals. Unless you're using them every single day, all the time, you're not going to be a specialist gimbal operator. If we're kind of doing it like we do, like I do, not every video, but now and again, then you really have to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. So it's a good idea to, if it's you or someone you're shooting or whatever, just to go through the moves, first plan it out and just even in your head going, I'm going from here to here to here. That's it. That's all you got to do. Then do it a couple of times and then you're golden. Now, the other problem when you have a gimbal on a tripod is obviously it's a little bit nerve-wracking. You are putting your trust into the tripod and that you've got it screwed in correctly with the gimbal and nothing is going to fall off because if the gimbal falls from a height. Yeah, I'll be honest, when I was doing these shots, I was quite nervous.
Ooh. It's too heavy.
And a lot of ball heads won't take the weight of the camera and the gimbal. It'll just tilt a little bit. So just factor that in. But the weight of these things, all right? I know we all want the gun show, but if you're holding a gimbal out on a tripod and it's going this way, look, I'm no MacGyver, but old folks might get that joke. But like, there's a constant pull down. Gravity is your enemy here. And you're only going to be able to do a couple of these takes. So that's why it's really important to plan it out. Your arms are going to be absolutely brutalized. Part of the fun, anything for the shot, as we would say. I don't know who the we is, but you get what I'm saying, right? So those are the really kind of cinematic moves that anybody can master. If though you're trying all of these, there is one thing that's so important, and everybody does gimbal videos and the cinematic moves, but nobody explains the settings. The settings out of the box on any gimbal will not work really well for these types of moves. And these are kind of basic moves. They're nothing too complicated. Maybe some are complicated, but the thing is, the settings are absolutely vital. The speed the gimbal reacts, whether it kind of moves to small motion, big motion, all of these settings are so important to getting the best cinematic looking footage you can out of a gimbal. And it so happens, that I've got a video here on all of those gimbal settings that you got to dial in the actual gimbal itself. It's only going to take a couple of minutes. It's going to make a huge difference with your actual footage. And these settings are specific to the new Zhiyun CinePeer Weebil 3E, but the idea of smoothness and dampness and motor speed, that's in all gimbals. So check this out and I will see you on the next one.